Hello, continuing the servlet classes here. Continuing the servlet classes. Now I'll move on to this server, the server responses. That is the HTTP server response headers. So in this case is nothing but as we already discussed some of the response on the request headers. Similarly, we are having the response headers. So in case of the response headers, a response from a web server normally consists of a status line, one or more response, or a blank line and the document. So this is the thing which will be returned in case of the response here. So setting up the response is nothing but here headers often goes hand in hand with the setting the status codes in the status line. So these status codes are having some methods are involved. The in case of these methods are nothing but which will be in general purpose with the headers with the set header method of the HTTP servlet response. In case of the request headers, set header there is a get header from the method called as HTTP servlet request. So these headers are usually available. That is in case of the request header, get header, HTTP request header, response header, set header, method of HTTP servlet response. So usually these methods are nothing but it consisting of two set header methods here. So which will be basically like dates and the integers. So one thing is nothing but the first one is set header, which will be returning two argument, which will take two arguments. So this method saves you the trouble of translating the Java date in milliseconds from the 1970 into the current timing. And the set int header, so set int header is nothing but it same here also it takes two arguments. So this method spares you the minor inconvenience of converting of an int to a string. So we'll see about some different headers. We'll understand some of the HTTP servlet response headers here. The response headers, the first thing is nothing but in this case the HTTP servlet response supplies a number of convenience methods for specifying uh, the HTTP servlet response which supplies a number of methods for specifying the response headers. The first one is nothing but the first thing is nothing but here the contain type, set contain type. So in this case is nothing but here whenever you see about some different sorry mm, set contain type is nothing but some of the common headers. So in this case is nothing but when you set the content headers here, so this is usually including about the majority of the content type, what type of the content you are sending, whether it's an HTML or text or HTML or the MIME type, like it might be a JPEG file or a PNG file or a video file. And the content length is nothing but here it sets what sets the content length header, which is useful for the browser supports persistent for getting the HTTP connections. And add cookie, in case of this add cookie is nothing but it inserts a cookie into the set cookie header. And then the send redirect usually is nothing but if the requested URL is not present, then the server will be redirecting it to the some other URL code of the by setting the status code as 302 for the common headers here. So in this case is nothing but by using all those different methods here we'll understand the HTTP 1.1 response headers. So the good understanding of these headers can increase the effectiveness of the servlets here. So the first one is nothing but the allow. So it allows the header to specify the request methods like get, post, and etc. from the server supports. And similarly is nothing but the cache control. So in case of the cache control here, cache control um, header tells the browser or the other client that the circumstances in some of the circumstances in which the response document can safely be cached here. So this safely becomes can be cached is has what the possible values like public, the document is cacheable, private, there is a single user, and then no cache is nothing but here document should never be cached here. So like some of these things are cached here, like example is given response.set header. Similarly, we are having many more methods which involving the cache control here. So as of now, we'll have three methods we'll remember here. So that is a public, private, and the no cache. So next header is nothing but the connection. So the connection is nothing but a value of close for this response header, where it instructs the browser not to use the persistent HTTP connections. Okay. Next is the content encoding. So this header indicates the way in which the page was encoded during the transmission. And then the content language. This header indicates the number of bytes in the response. Um, in the response here, like language in which the document is, like the content language is nothing but here, which gives the content length, which gives the number of bytes in the response which will be sent here. And the content language is nothing but the content language header signifies the language in which the document is written. Like you'll be having standard codes such as EN US, then different forms of the languages are available here, English US or normally English here. So set according to those languages. So the web page will be will be responded in the written in the form of a requested language. Then the content type. So the content type is nothing but the content type header gives you the MIME type. Like MIME is nothing but multipurpose internet mail extension of the type of the response code. So usually for normal is nothing but here whenever we request something here, we don't know exactly what type of the HTML you're calling here. So response dot set content type. Now normally when the browser wants to return only the text content in the form of an HTML, we call the response content the set content type. We are setting the response as text bar HTML. In case other than this, like you are having many different options are available. So that the common MIME types are like nothing but application MS Word. You specify this the application MS Word in the text bar HTML place here. So according to that, the response content type will be changed here. So if you're interested in the PDF, you set the application.pdf. If you're interested in the MS Excel, opening a file or downloading a file here, use the extension, the content type as MS Excel, the PowerPoint, GIF file, JPEG file, and then the PNG file, video file, and the text bar HTML. So whichever the type you want to set for the response dot content type here, according to that you uh, set here, and then particular the servlet class will be according to that it will return it will give the response type of the document here. And then expires. This header indicates that usually the expires is nothing but this header uh, stipulates the time at which the content should be considered out of date and thus no longer be cached. So one way is nothing but you are giving a stipulated time for the response pages where it will be accessible later. So later after some time, that page will not be accessible from the server. Last modified, it indicates that when the document was last modified. And location, as you know, is nothing but here it notifies the browser of the document address. And the refresh is nothing but it indicates the in how many seconds you want to refresh the web page to get the updated web page. So to set the refresh here, like response set int header, then pass the value as refresh and how many milliseconds. There's nothing but 30 milliseconds. So in this way is nothing but you set the response for this refresh page for your response header. Similarly is nothing but you set the header, like so you set the header, now you are setting it as int header. Similarly you can set one more page here wherein browser can reload the current page itself, like response dot set header, and pass the value as refresh and pass the number of milliseconds. So automatically that web page will be refreshed by itself and it will be updated here after some few milliseconds here. And finally finally we are having retry after. So when the service is available, that time you can retry it after some time to again call the request here. And set cookie. So this set cookie is nothing but here the set cookie header specifies cookie associated with the page, and lastly is nothing but the authenticate. This header is always included in the 401. There is an unauthorized status codes here. So these are all the response headers here. So I have made a very simple one more slide here wherein you can easily take out some few common headers from the request headers and as well as from the response headers, so you'll not be getting confused which headers are the like headers, like whether it's a request header or the response header here. So to name a few, there are some common type of headers are available, like uh, connection, then the content length, then the cookie. Okay, so these are the different the common request headers are available. So remember, in case of the request headers, accept, accept, accept char set, accept encoding, accept language, authorization, connection, connection content length, then cookie, host, referrer, and lastly is the user agent. So these are the request headers. And in case of the response headers, allow, that is allow, cache control, connection, content encoding, content language, content length, content type, expires, when it was last modified, where exactly the address of this document, the refresh, and the retry after some time, and set cookie, and lastly is the www authenticate. So these are the request headers and the response header. So very important questions. These questions will be asked, either of these questions will be asked, either explain the request headers, the HTTP server HTTP client request headers, or list and explain about the HTTP server response headers. So remember both the request headers and the response headers, which plays a vital role in setting up the servlet page here. Thank you.